Tonight at 10, officials in France clearing the migrant camp in Calais declare mission accomplished. Parts of the camp were set on fire overnight and during the day as the authorities continued their work of closing it down.
It's truly today is the end of the jungle, an important, powerful moment.
But tonight there appear to be groups of migrants who haven't been processed by the authorities and have returned to the site. We'll be asking whether the French authorities' claim that they've succeeded is really true. Also tonight, the battle for Mosul. We report from a village abandoned by so-called Islamic State and the tunnel system they left behind.
We also found this piece of paper. Now, it's a list of rules and regulations. There are rules for how you should pray on a Friday, how to pray when you travel, and how to pray before going into battle.
UKIP releases its findings into the row that left one of its MEPs in hospital. Buildings collapse amid panic in the streets as 2 earthquakes strike central Italy this evening.
Candice!
And the baker from Bedfordshire wins the crown in the final Great British Bake Off on the BBC.
Yep, sectioned under the Mental Health Act, but why was this young woman allowed out to buy medication which led to an overdose? And concerns a lack of cash could derail free childcare plans.
Good evening. French officials in charge of clearing the so-called jungle migrant camp in Calais say that everyone has now been removed. But tonight, aid workers are disputing that claim, saying there are up to 100 children who are not registered to be relocated and are still there. Many of the makeshift shelters in the camp were set on fire today. It's unclear by whom. And our correspondents on the ground say that some people who were earlier removed have in fact now returned. With the latest from Calais, here's Lucy Williamson.
Today, the eerie calm that has hung over the jungle broke. The ending of the camp telegraphed across the Calais sky. Shelters set ablaze, in protest perhaps, or resignation tinged with revenge.
So far there's been very little resistance to this clearance, but the operation seems to be reaching a tipping point. Those who want to go have left. Those who are still here have a different point to make.
At the camp's borders, those who still had homes inside watched and waited, held back by riot police. Officials say the fires have speeded up the eviction and that the clearance will be over by tonight.
We're seeing that after 3 days, the migrants are here. 5,000 have come to this centre so far. There are still some outside. The last fires in the camp have convinced them. We've seen some Syrians who didn't want to come initially. They are here now. And community leaders who said that they also wanted to go, now that their communities had gone and there was no one left. So it's time to close. The mission was a success.
But in the past few hours, migrants have been filing back into the jungle to sleep among the ashes. Among them, we met Aziz. His friends who joined the buses out on Monday have told him it wasn't worth leaving, he said, and they were coming home to Calais.
I'm going back into sleep there. I know the jungle has been finished, been banned, nothing, but it's better to be there until tomorrow. If the police come, we are ready to go to the detention center.
And aid workers say the speed of today's operation has left some of the camp's most vulnerable with nowhere to sleep tonight.
In terms of the children, they are not all in state protection. We've counted so many who don't have the wristbands, cannot get into the containers, cannot go into the Jules Ferry Centre and have no accommodation whatsoever.
Officials say this is the last chance for migrants to leave before heavy machinery comes in. The story of Calais migrants is over, they say, but for those still determined to reach Britain, it doesn't feel like the end. Tonight, Ali and his friends were bedding down to sleep on the road outside the jungle, too scared of fires to sleep inside. Most of them said they were 17.
We cannot sleep because my container is full of fire. No anything. all my baggage is all destroyed.
Aid workers say dozens of children are left in limbo here tonight, with the jungle gone and the secure shelters here full. They no longer have any home in Calais, never mind anywhere else.
We can talk to Lucy in Calais now. Lucy, the French authorities are adamant that they've cleared the camp, but have they?
Well, they've certainly broken the back of this operation. Between the fires today and the heavy machinery, there are very few people left living in the camp. But it has to be said that there are still, the authorities here, facing two major problems. The first is, as I said, the speed of this operation has left some people uncatered for, particularly the miners. And we're told tonight that it's not just Ali and his friends who are homeless, but also a group of younger children who've had to be put up in a nearby school because they just didn't have anywhere else to go. And the authorities are also facing a more long-term problem, in the sense that you might be able to remove the jungle. That doesn't necessarily remove the desire of people to go to the UK. And in that sense, one teenager told me tonight, the jungle will never be gone.
Lucy, thank you. Lucy Williamson there. Iraqi special forces say they've moved more than 1,000 civilians from frontline areas around the city of Mosul, which is the last stronghold of self-styled Islamic State in the country. As Iraqi troops and Kurdish fighters continue their push towards the city, the militants are fighting back with suicide bombers and are said to be using civilians as human shields to slow down the advance. Our correspondent Orla Guerin is travelling with Kurdish forces, and she reports now from the village of Fazliya.
In the skies near Mosul, Apache helicopters, armed with missiles but holding fire. The call to prayer echoes deep in the valley below from a mosque commandeered by IS. The black flag still flying on the roof. But look at the other flags here. Kurdish forces say there are innocent civilians trapped below, forced to provide a human shield for IS. They have gathered families in a few houses, says Captain Ali Hassan. They have them surrounded. That's why we can't open fire or bomb with jets. Otherwise, we would have taken this village quickly. When it comes to taking Mosul, there are lessons to be learned in the villages further east. Time has already run out for IS here, but they've left evidence of their tactics. Drums of oil, which they use to create a smokescreen. The whole world is fighting for this, says Shukr Omar, a Kurdish colonel, and they are burning it. These books could be booby-trapped. Even the Quran has been elsewhere. We didn't lift the rocks to find out. In among the rubble, an IS fighter lies unburied. Airstrikes by Britain and the US are a key element in this battle, but the Kurds say the enemy is cunning and is adapting. IS have started hiding snipers in the wreckage. Inside the mosque, bags of earth hidden from view.
That's very deep.
Here's where it came from. We descended to the depths of an underground layer.
These rungs are quite steep.
In this elaborate warren, IS fighters could live and move around, safe from airstrikes and surveillance drones.
Well, this was the sleeping area for one of the fighters. The ceiling has been reinforced. There are strong beams here, and there was an electricity supply. There were also some creature comforts. There's a fan here with Quranic verses written on it. And we also found this piece of paper. Now, it's a list of rules and regulations. There are rules for how you should pray on a Friday, how to pray when you travel, and how to pray before going into battle.
Along the front line, the jihadis are emerging from the darkness to ambush Iraqi forces. This is just one tunnel in one village. Imagine what lies waiting under the streets of Mosul. Orla Guerin, BBC News, Northern Iraq.
Airstrikes on a rebel-held village in northern Syria are reported to have killed at least 20 people. A school was one of a number of buildings hit in the village of Has, and children are said to be among the dead. Syrian state television said the raid had targeted militant positions. The UK Independence Party has released the findings of an internal inquiry into a row between two of its MEPs at the European Parliament in Strasbourg earlier this month. Stephen Woolfe, who has since left the party, was admitted to hospital after the incident. Now the inquiry has found that he started the argument, but the party has issued a formal reprimand to fellow MEP Mike Hookham. Our political correspondent Alex Forsyth reports.
3 weeks ago, and UKIP MEP Stephen Woolfe was in hospital in Strasbourg. He spent 3 nights here. But what exactly led to this is still not entirely clear. It followed an altercation here in the European Parliament with a fellow MEP. In this room, a UKIP meeting became heated. The party's report into the incident says most people present saw Mr Woolfe take off his jacket and ask a colleague to step outside. Mr Woolfe and fellow MEP Mike Hookham went outside into this ante-room. Here, no one saw what happened. Mr Woolfe said he received a blow. Mr Hookham said neither man attempted to strike the other. According to the report, this door then opened and Mr Woolfe came tumbling backwards into this room, hitting his head on a ledge. Mr Hookham believes UKIP's report backs up his account.
I'm pleased that it's come out and it's stated that no blows were thrown. I never hit him, and I'm pleased that it states that if he has hit his head, he's done it by his own violation. He just fell back through the door. I had nothing whatsoever to do with that.
But while the report did find Mr Woolfe instigated the altercation by suggesting he and Mr Hookham deal with their differences man to man, it couldn't confirm what took place in the ante-room and so offered no determination on the facts. Mr Woolfe, who collapsed on this bridge 2 hours after the incident, has since left UKIP, so isn't subject to party discipline. He maintains his version of events, that he was struck. And today, the President of the European Parliament suggested he believed him.
There is a clear suspicion that Mr Woolfe was subjected to an act of violence, which is why we referred the matter to the prosecutors.
This angered some senior figures in the party.
How the Speaker, the neutral chairman of a parliament, can conclude himself that a punch was thrown, that Mr Hookham's guilty, is all beyond me. This is completely political on behalf of the European Union, trying to cause, maximum embarrassment for UKIP, as if there wasn't enough there already.
What happened here, although still unclear, was undoubtedly embarrassing and could now be investigated by police. Party officials, keen to move on, say it doesn't define UKIP, but it has laid internal rifts bare. Alex Forsyth, BBC News, Strasbourg.
2 strong earthquakes have struck central Italy this evening in the same region where a quake killed 300 people in August. There are reports of residents running into the streets, and the first pictures show damaged buildings. The epicentre of one quake was near Perugia in the village of Viso, more than 100 miles north of Rome, where the tremors were also felt. Our Europe editor Katja Adler is in Rome tonight and has just sent this report.
The second earthquake was far stronger than the first, with dramatic consequences. For historical, treasured churches, their frightened communities, and terrified drivers, with roads blocked by earthquake debris. Emergency services are still assessing the situation. No deaths or serious injuries have so far been reported. But anxious families poured out onto the streets of central Italy tonight, fearing the next tremor. Those too scared to sleep at home are being housed in emergency accommodation. Schools in the area will remain closed tomorrow. The earthquakes were felt across Italy, from far north to south. This breaking news bulletin in Rome was interrupted mid-flow by an aftershock. Local authorities are appealing for calm, but Italians are nervous. It's only 2 months since a massive earthquake, also in central Italy, destroyed towns and villages and took nearly 300 lives. Now, central Italy was only just about getting back on its feet after the horrors of this summer's earthquake, only just about getting back to normal life. There were questions at the time about the suitability of the structures of building in this earthquake-prone area, and it's seen as almost a miracle tonight that so far no serious casualties have been reported. But the cost of rebuilding and rehousing will be considerable for the Italian government, which already has the highest national debt to income ratio in the whole of the EU after Greece. Italy is already locked in a battle with Brussels over spending, with the Italian Prime Minister saying the migrant crisis and earthquakes like these are a reason why he needs flexibility.
Many thanks, Katya. With under a fortnight to go until America elects a new president, the Republican candidate Donald Trump has been criticised for taking a break from campaigning to launch a new business venture, a hotel near the White House in Washington. Mr. Trump is trailing his Democratic challenger Hillary Clinton in the polls as both fight for votes in what's been a bitter presidential election campaign. Well, let's go now to our chief correspondent, Gavin Hewitt, who's in Washington this evening. Gavin.
Rita, we're now on the final stretches of this bruising campaign. The focus is very much on a few key battle-ground states. Most important of those is Florida. Florida, who could determine who ends up here in the White House. Well, I've spent the last 3 days with the Trump campaign down in Florida. 3 days inside the Trump campaign. The pace frenetic. Donald Trump targeting Florida, making 12 campaign stops in a state he has to win. His team concedes he is behind, but his crowds remain large and impassioned. In Tampa, stopping to hug the flag, he lays out his core message, putting America first, bringing back jobs, and a promise to roll back Obama's health care plan, which extended coverage to millions of Americans.
My plan also includes repealing and replacing Obamacare. A disaster.
Donald Trump has seized on the fact that some premiums for health insurance are rising sharply. His long convoy moves on, his team buoyed by the size of the crowd. He uses his plane as a prop. Here, as elsewhere, he stokes intense dislike for his opponent Hillary Clinton, saying she lies more than any other human being. Another stop, and despite less than 2 weeks to go to polling, we were led out to a Trump golf resort. It felt as much a commercial for his business empire as a campaign stop. Employees were invited to come forward to declare he was a good boss.
But I love working here, I love my coworkers, and they take really good care of us here.
As he leaves, I question whether his strategy is working. Mr. Trump, do you still think you can win?
I think we're going to win. I think we're leading. Actually, I think we're leading. You look at the poll, you look at the recent poll that came out. Yeah, I think we're winning. We'll see.
More crowds wait for him in a field in Tallahassee. There is an undercurrent at these events that the establishment is lined up against him. Donald Trump insists the polls are phony and that there's a real danger that the outcome will be rigged. He tells audiences like this, don't let the elite steal the election. So at his rallies, there are now many who doubt the electoral process.
Not exactly rigged, but it is corrupt.
Will you accept the result of the election, whatever it is?
Not really, no. I'll accept the results, but I'm not 100% believing that it's totally fair, absolutely.
The Trump convoy departs. Every day, Donald Trump mentions Brexit. He believes that in America, there are hidden pools of voters who will bring him unexpected victory. Today, Donald Trump and his family took time away from the campaign trail to officially open a new hotel in Washington. The candidate said it was an example of delivering under budget and ahead of schedule. Even so, some Republicans question the wisdom of doing this so close to the election. So what about Hillary Clinton? Well, she is said to be quietly confident. Today she was going after Donald Trump's business practices. She said he actually stiffed his workers. Well, my colleague John Sopel has been with the Clinton campaign, which has been very determined to make character a central issue.
Not stumbling is what it's all about now for Hillary Clinton. The polls are in her favour, the debates are over, the ground game is in place.
I wish the election were today.
And she says from now on she's not going to react to Donald Trump. She has conduits to do that. And no one gets under his skin like Senator Elizabeth Warren.
He thinks that because he has a mouthful of Tic Tacs, that he can force himself on any woman within groping distance. Well, I got news for you, Donald Trump. Women have had it with guys like you.
And she rounded on him for calling Hillary Clinton in the final debate that nasty woman.
Get this, Donald. Nasty women are tough. And on November 8th, we nasty women are going to march our nasty feet to cast our nasty votes to get you out of our lives forever.
The growing confidence of the Clinton campaign as she crisscrosses the country in these final 2 weeks of campaigning is being matched by despondency, teetering on despair among some Republicans facing re-election to Congress. Their once strong support for Donald Trump is beginning to dissipate.
You support police officers being shot and killed in streets. No, you support police.
The crucible of this bad-tempered election battle, all recent election battles for that matter, is Florida.
No, I'm not going to chill, because you guys are getting used by crooked Hillary.
Where early voting has started. A victory here for Hillary Clinton would in effect mean it's game over for Donald Trump. Her stump speech hammers home the same policy points, raising the minimum wage, increasing infrastructure spending, and raising the taxes of the wealthiest to help small businesses and blue-collar workers. And with her strong lead among women voters, she makes no apologies for trying to appeal to them.
Donald Trump attacks me, says I'm playing the woman's card. You know what? If standing up for equal pay is playing the woman's card, then deal me in.
But for all her love of detailed policy, one subject that Hillary Clinton has steered clear of these past few days is Obamacare, since it was announced the price of health insurance was going to rise so steeply. At today's rally in Palm Beach, they sang her happy birthday. Hillary Clinton is 69 today. She's hoping the gift from the American people will come in just under 2 weeks' time. John Sopel, BBC News, Florida.
Well, the polls very largely point in one direction for a victory for Hillary Clinton. But in the past 2 days, a couple of polls, certainly in Florida, have tightened. And travelling with the Donald Trump team, their view is that there are still hundreds of thousands of Americans very disillusioned with the politics of this town here, who he can still persuade to vote for him over the next 10 days until November the 8th. Rita.
Gavin, thank you. Gavin Hewitt there. People in the lowest paid jobs in the UK have seen the biggest rise in earnings over the last financial year, according to new figures. The Office for National Statistics says the introduction of the national living wage last April and low inflation have boosted take-home pay. Our personal finance correspondent Simon Gompertz has the story.
Newport in South Wales. It has some of the lowest paid jobs in the UK, but pay here has also seen some of the biggest rises. April's £7.20 national living wage handed an extra 50 pence an hour to low-paid workers over the age of 25, a major increase for 4.5 million people across the UK.
So I know some people are all saying that they think the pay's gone up, but other people are saying they think that, you know, it's not as good as it could be, it needs to be a bit higher.
It is changing, obviously, to the better, but not good enough, still not good enough, do you know what I mean? With everything going up, gas, electric, cost of living is going up.
Than the wages are going up.
With my previous jobs, they've all been part-time and stuff, and their rate have been really rubbish, and I've come to Starbucks and now I'm on like £7 an hour. So mine is definitely increased and stuff.
We've had the biggest growth in typical pay since the financial crisis, up 2.2% in a year. But at the bottom of the pay scale, for the lowest paid, it's been 6.2%, and that's the biggest increase in 2 decades and of particular benefit to women. So while female workers are still paid 9.4% less than men, that's the narrowest gender pay gap on record.
So wages rising while many prices hardly moved, but no longer. There are price rise alerts for food, more for fuel because of the drop in the pound after the vote for Brexit, for imported clothes paid for in pounds, and imports like washing machines and other electricals. We're in for a squeeze.
The rapid increases in pay don't look assured at all, and crucially inflation is set to start rising quite rapidly, particularly in the wake of the vote to leave the EU, and that means that real pay, the value of your earnings after we take account of inflation, looks like it's going to be much more muted than in today's figures in years to come.
For those on the new national living wage, it is set to go up over the next few years, but keeping up with the cost of living could still be a struggle. Simon Gompertz, BBC News.
Police have charged a 19-year-old man following the discovery of a suspicious device on a London tube train last week. North Greenwich Station was evacuated last Thursday. Damon Smith from South East London has been accused of making or possessing an explosive substance with intent to endanger life. He'll appear at Westminster Magistrates Court tomorrow. Football now, and Manchester United face their local rivals Manchester City tonight, with manager Jose Mourinho hoping to atone for his side's 4-0 defeat to Chelsea at the weekend. The match in the EFL Cup ended in a 1-0 win for Mourinho's team, as Katie Gornall reports now from Manchester.
Since moving to Manchester, the special one hasn't always been the happy one. Life here, he says, in a hotel away from his family, is a disaster. No matter how many times he makes the journey north, it remains a struggle. And there's been struggles on the pitch too. So a win here against old rivals would help lift the mood. Pep Guardiola arrived looking confident, but his side are without a win in 5 games. Perhaps this was Mourinho reminding him. Almost immediately, City went on the attack, producing the perfect cross, if not the perfect finish. Iñárritu, the guilty man this time. It was a warning that appeared to spur United into action. Marcus Rashford took aim, but the teenager came away with nothing here. At half-time, 2 very different managers were in a similar position. But United emerged re-energised. Paul Pogba came inches from making a difference. This time those in blue owed much to their man in yellow. The red tide kept coming though, and City ran out of ways to turn it back. Juan Mata arriving at just the right time to confirm the inevitable.
And Mata! And Manchester United have started the second half like a different team.
One by one, Guardiola turned to those he'd left out. While Mourinho's side sat back, content to make City toil, and it worked. The 1 goal enough for United to advance with what feels like an important step forward for their manager.
Well, both managers knew coming into this that at this stage of the tournament there wasn't much to win, but there was plenty to lose. Now, arguably, there was more at stake here for Jose Mourinho at Old Trafford. And although Pep Guardiola has always said that the League Cup was his lowest priority, this is now 6 games without a win for the Manchester City manager. Rita.
Thanks very much, Katie. Now, it's attracted audiences of millions with its soggy bottoms and gentle innuendo. And tonight, the winner of the last series of the Great British Bake Off to air on the BBC was named as Candice Brown. The programme now moves to Channel 4 without 3 of its 4 presenters. David Silito watched the final.
Clapham Grand, a nightclub in South London, where the young and trendy have this evening been watching a baking show.
You know, what more could you want? Mary berry, cakes, wine.
I'm excited to see what happens with it, but it will be sad to see this team go.
The final of the Bake Off has become an event.
The winner of the Great British Bake Off 2016, Candice.
6 years ago, it was considered a hit when 3 million watched.
These days, the audience is almost 5 times that. And here we have
Bake Off on the big screen. It's almost become like a cup final, just with biscuits and a bit of sponge-related jeopardy. Isn't that right, Mary? Over the years, it's brought us tears.
Nadia!
Soggy bottoms and baked Alaskas in the bin.
No, go.
The first winner in 2010 was Ed Kimber. He had no idea if anyone would watch the show, but the moment he won, he decided to give up banking for baking.
The one thing I only wanted from the show was to be able to make baking my career. And since day one, the show has finished. That's all I've done.
Welcome to the Great Irish Deutschland Brazil Bake Off.
And 6 years on, the show has gone round the world. And the moment the news came that the British version was moving from the BBC to Channel 4, Ed's phone began to ring.
So you're surprised about the amount of interest there's been this year, then?
A little bit. I ended up doing interviews with CNN, with The Washington Post, I was on the NPR news show.
All about Bake Off?
Yes, about this little sweet show that I did years ago. But its success just shows you how popular it is in America. I have friends in America that are obsessed with the show.
I did it. I'm good. I'm good enough.
So tonight it's been Candice Brown's Bake Off moment. The show's not just popular, it's changed lives. But now it's off to Channel 4, which means for the BBC, this has been their showstopper. David Siletto, BBC News.
Not a dry eye in the house. Newsnight is coming up on BBC Two. Here's Evan.
We've spent a year talking about Donald Trump, and entertaining as that is, all the evidence suggests Hillary Clinton will actually be president. So we thought we'd look at her chances, her politics and her personality tonight. Join me now on BBC Two, 11 p.m. in Scotland.
And here on BBC One, it's time for the news where you are. Good night.